After months and months, and seemingly more months on top of that of speculation, rumor, and innuendo, and reports, and this, that, and X, Y, and Z, we now have it officially in writing that Eric Bischoff was wrong, and AEW is not being kicked off of Warner Brothers Discovery. In fact, they've got a brand new TV deal.
It only took this long to prove Eric Bischoff wrong.
So I've now watched the first 5 episodes of the McMahon documentary, and there's a point in that where Eric Bischoff is just like, yeah, the only reason we were kicked off the air is because the AOL Time Warner thing, they just didn't want wrestling. And I immediately went, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
And then
I bet he believes it.
And it cut to Mel to being like, yeah, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
Like, if they were doing the business they were doing in 1998, then they would still be on the air now.
It's funny how that works.
I was like, yep, that's what I thought. Anyway, sort of about AEW. AEW have got a brand new TV deal and will be here for the foreseeable future. 3 years, in fact, which means it is now guaranteed to have more episodes than Nitro as well. LOL. I am Luke Owen. Welcome to the WrestleTalk podcast. This, of course, is the beautiful man Tempest. Ooh. I'm in a good mood today. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan. NXT did great numbers on CW. It was a very good show as well. AEW TV news. I'm going to Hustle Wrestling tonight, so I'm all like jazzed up because I'm going to go see a wrestling show and I'm all really excited for it. And check out, first bell's at 7:30.
Oh, that's bloody lovely, isn't it?
Just.
And their shows are concise as well. You'll be done by 10.
Oh, it might even be before then.
Yeah.
I'm done at 10 with an intermission.
Yeah.
Oh, it'd be beautiful. That'd be a nice train journey home for me. I'll get home about 11:30. It'd be great. So I'm all jazzed up. Please do press that subscribe button. Give us a little thumbs up as well. Leave a comment down below with what you think of the AEW TV deal and this bizarre episode of Dynamite.
Oh, it was bizarre, wasn't it? It was quite bizarre. I have a lot of thoughts, both very positive. Like, I was so excited to talk about some of the things on this show. Some of the other bits I'm ready to tear into a little bit as well.
Yeah, I've got very much that. I said in the edited review, I was like, it was, as a show, a perfect distillation of AEW's 5 years.
Distillation. Good word.
I was like, great wrestling and overbooked nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
That's AEW in a nutshell. But we are going to kick things off. We're going to talk very briefly about the TV deal and some any thoughts that we might have. If you want some in-depth thoughts about it, Ollie and I did a bonus podcast about it, which is over on patreon.com/WrestleTalk. It's linked to in the video description, where we talked for over an hour about the TV deal. We go into all the various different reports, and we also look at, all right, I haven't got the graph here. I don't think I can put the graph up. I can't.
Look at this graph.
Yeah, the graph's not working. It's on a different scene. Where we've got like the AEW ratings across like the last 5 years, and it's kind of pointed out like, here's CM Punk's debut, here's where Sting debuts, here's where Sting retires, here's where Collision starts. And we kind of chart through that, and well as the rise of WWE and their hotness. So yeah, there's over an hour's chat there where we dive really, really into the TV deal and kind of like why over the last couple of years there has been this sort of growing old-timer resentment against AEW in podcast form.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, because I could take a victory lap of sorts and laugh at people who are simply not that smart. I find that at this stage to be rather unproductive.
Yeah.
Because at this point, if you're going to, your Cornettes and your Bischoffs and everything for like their takes, I don't think I'm going to change your mind, and neither is this news of a TV deal. If you thought AEW was dying before this announcement, you'll be thinking that forever and ever until the sun burns out.
You'll just say, well, they'll die in 3 years then.
Sure.
I'll just move the goalposts.
Yes. So I find that to be an unproductive line of thinking, but also, my God. That being said, I saw this news come out yesterday because I went to the films, went to the pictures yesterday. Yeah. I was very lucky to have been invited to the London premiere of A Different Man, starring Sebastian Stan and dear friend of the show, Adam Pearson. A brilliant film. Watch it when it comes out. And on the way back, I checked my phone and I was like, oh, they've officially announced the TV deal. And I'm starting to look through all the details. And I've not been hanging on every tweet that anybody with a source has said, oh, it's coming, imminently, whatever. I've not been hanging on that because I'm like, I know they're going to get the TV deal. Like, it was never even an uncertainty in my mind. But when it finally happened, I did kind of just go like,
Yeah.
Wrestling is healing a little bit.
Yeah, I
know?
think so, yeah.
Like, yeah, they were always going to get a TV deal, but now we genuinely do have another wrestling promotion that's just gotten a $500 million TV deal. And that's really impressive.
It's good for the talent as well.
Good for everyone involved. And even outside of it, rising tides hopefully will lift all boats. And this, to me, is an example of that, where if you had just shown me this 6-7 years ago, when there was no American alternative that wasn't Ring of Honor and their trashy iPay-per-views still not working, if that was your only alternative and you showed me this, that we would be getting another promotion with consistent TV and pay-per-views and all that, and they're getting a deal with Warner Brothers Discovery to go, which probably didn't exist at the time, and that's going to go on what would be HBO, I'd be like, well, that's crazy. That's never going to happen. And here we are. Yeah. And it just makes me feel a bit more secure as a wrestling fan that we are in a period where the worst is behind us, I'd like to think.
Not only that, but that person, you know, 7 years ago, you would be shown, oh yeah, in the TV we main evented by Okada versus Bryan Danielson.
I had that thought many times throughout this show. I'd be like, man, imagine showing that to the audience of the first ever Dynamite.
Yeah. Oh yeah, in 5 years' time, it'll be Okada versus Danielson.
Yep.
In one hell of a match, which we'll get to in a little bit. So yeah, so just broad strokes, TV deal is for 3 years with a 4th year option. Variety originally reported it was for $150 million per year. Sports Business Journal said it's actually more close to $170 million per year. WrestleVotes and Andrew Zarian are now saying it's actually closer to $185 million per year.
It's like a different amount in the first year and the third year, and they kind of balance out to like 170 or so.
I think it's roughly like that, and that's for Dynamite Collision, and I believe that's the pay-per-views as well, because the pay-per-views are going to Max. Well, that's going to be one way you can get it. You can still get it through like traditional pay-per-view methods, but AEW will be pushing you to sign up for Max and get it through Max, which will have on top of it, so you sign up for the subscription service, and then there'll be a pay-per-view model on top of Max, kind of like a Sky here in the UK. That's the way it works here.
The libraries for the TV shows as well.
Yes, libraries for the TV shows for Rampage, Dynamite, and Collision. Rampage is being cancelled, but the exclusivity deal with WBD is now over, which was introduced when they did the Collision deal last year. So that's now over, which means that they can shop Rampage to another network if they want to. There's lots of talk about Fox. Swerve Strickland accidentally said when he didn't realize he was being filmed, that's the story, apparently. He didn't realize that someone was recording it for a vlog, was like, oh yeah, we're going to Fox. The Fight Force were like, yeah, the people in AEW really wish that hadn't got out. So they may be going to Fox. That could either be Rampage or it could be Shockwave, which is the other rumored TV show, which is potentially on a Tuesday or a Thursday. Meltzer wrote in one of the Observer updates, they don't want it to be on Monday or Friday because they do not want to go head-to-head with Raw or SmackDown.
Smart. But
it makes sense to do it on like Tuesday. Well, like
Tuesday Night Wars, we're back, baby.
Well, Meltz had a really interesting write-up about this because he said like Thursdays makes the most sense because there's no competition. But if you do it on Tuesdays, you're going head-to-head with NXT on a much smaller network. You'll be on Fox and they'll be on the CW. And because WWE don't want to be, don't want to lose in this, they'll just load up with NXT with main roster stars, which in process dilutes Raw and SmackDown.
Yeah. And honestly, what is the cost of that? Rampage?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say throw money away with Rampage. I'd be a little surprised if that show continues.
I would be too.
But I don't know, if you want to galaxy brain it and try and tank WWE in a different way, like, all right, that's a creative endeavor, I suppose.
One of the really interesting write-ups on this is from Sean Ross Sapp's report on Fightful Select, which was, I'm just going to read what he wrote here. Of all the details of the deal internally, pay-per-views being paywalled and then still costing money was the only one met with negativity. When we asked those in AEW, they pointed at the UFC point of view of if you cannibalize your pay-per-view model, you can't go back. He writes here, a good example of this is WWE moving to the network format and being unable to capitalize on big pay-per-view sales now that they're hot. The argument there is that they sold all of their pay-per-views to Peacock, well, originally to themselves on the network, then did it to Peacock because they weren't making any money on pay-per-view because pay-per-view buys were down. But that's because they weren't a hot product. Now they are a hot product. They'd probably be making more money in pay-per-view sales than they would do if they'd than just selling it to Peacock.
100%.
And that's the argument that they're making here, is that once you do this, you can't really go back. Like, WWE now can't go back to a pay-per-view model.
Nope.
They've conditioned their fans for too long now to expect it on a streaming platform at a subscription price that you're getting a bunch of other stuff with.
Look at all the people who even still are like, oh, I'm not paying $50 for an AEW show. I was like, you paid $40 or $50 for WWE shows for like 2 decades?
Yeah. And they were doing them a lot.
Yeah. And it's just because WWE told you that they're actually worth $10.
Yeah.
Can't put the genie back in the bottle.
But I thought this was a very interesting thing. So one of Sean's sources at WBD said that the ease of access of WWE's PLE events could be a big reason they're so successful now. So it's kind of like a little from column A, a little from column B. On one hand, you have got, well, we do lose this huge pay-per-view model that we've got. And AEW have been very successful on pay-per-view since 2019. They've had their ups and they've had their downs, but broadly, every pay-per-view they've done has been a success.
Yeah, when you consider what the buy rates are for those shows, like, they're not incomparable to a lot of, like, WWE's kind of, like, middling period. And
Absolutely.
you look at the reach that AEW has compared to then, it's still way less. So that's a lot more customers being converted to paying customers.
Yeah.
And that was always the thing that TNA always struggled with, because, yeah, they'd get 1 million viewers on Spike, but a fraction of them would buy the pay-per-views.
You know,
AEW fans buy their pay-per-views.
Joe versus Angle at Genesis 06 did like 60,000 buys. And that's one of their most successful pay-per-views, if not the most successful pay-per-view they ever did. It was only 60,000 buys. Like, AEW was doubling that on like their bad days of doubling that.
It was their best pay-per-view until Kenny wrestled for them.
Yeah, exactly. So on one hand, you've got that. You're kind of like cannibalizing your pay-per-view market. On the other hand, if you're on Max and you're probably in front of more eyeballs than you would be just on your TV show saying we're on pay-per-view, then that might actually make your products hotter. And then that kind of translates into ticket sales for live events or for merchandise or for, you know, this, that, and the other. So it is a very weird balancing act, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, no, completely. This is the sort of thing where it's business talk. So it might not be what a lot of people watch wrestling for, but it is very interesting to kind of see how, you know, the business has changed. You know, you look at this compared to where WWE was introducing the WWE Network 10 years ago, and the whole business has completely changed. So seeing this, we still don't know exactly what adding AEW to Max is going to look like at the end of this TV deal. Maybe it'll be looked at as like this really great thing. Maybe it'll be looked at as like, oh, well, that actually took away from this other area of business. We won't know until then. And those smarter than I can, you know, hopefully give us an estimation and a prediction. But as of right now, you look at this deal and AEW getting a big wad full of cash, you know, is kind of a job well done over the last 5 years of building a brand that's now valued at like $2 billion. I can't see this as anything less than one of the greatest success stories in wrestling history.
Now, I think probably officially the second most profitable wrestling company in the history of time.
Yeah.
Like that's in 5 years. You know, like you can go back to 2019 and Pissant Company and like it'll be dead within a year. They're just a t-shirt company. 5 years on. And they've got this really, really great deal for them where they are looking to make upwards of $200 million a year. That's if they get the Fox deal as well. That's probably pushing them over $200 million a year. Like, for the next 3 or 4 years. It's an incredible achievement.
Incredible achievement.
Yeah. The other thing to mention as well.
Hats off to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And mine as well. I am not wearing one. The other thing to add as well on this is that the shows themselves will be on TBS and TNT, but will be streaming live on Max at the same time. So you can watch them through the Max app. I find this interesting because that means the West Coast feed will be the same as the East Coast feed, but then you will 3 hours later, if you're on the West Coast, you can then watch it on TNT or TBS, basically watching the replay on there. So what this will mean, and we kind of figured this was going to happen when we get into 2025 anyway with Raw moving to Netflix, is we are in the final throes of ratings chats.
Yeah.
Because
Isn't that going to be nice?
Because, I mean, we're saying this on the Patreon podcast. I like ratings chat.
Sure.
I like diving into the business aspect of things. I get that not everyone else does, but I enjoy some of it. But we're not going to be able to do it with Raw on Netflix unless, Nielsen start tracking Netflix numbers, which I don't think they'll be doing because I think it'll be almost impossible to do. AEW's ratings are probably going to bottom out because they'll be splitting their audience between traditional TV and Max, which really basically means just NXT on CW and SmackDown on USA, and that'll be it for 5 years, and then they go to Netflix.
Yeah.
And then that's it's completely done. So, we're all this is the final nail in the coffin of ratings talk.
I'm not going to miss it. I like every once in a while if something totally noteworthy comes out, that'll be, interesting. And I like being able to look at the data and see how the business kind of goes and see the peaks and valleys of it. But if Twitter didn't exist, I would enjoy it much more, probably.
Yeah, probably. If you want to get your thoughts read out on the air, WrestleTalk.com/support is the link to click while you're clicking links. Head down there because we've got a brand new episode of Worst Match Ever. We've got a brand new WrestleTalk original looking at a wrestler who was put in jail for a wrestling receipt. And we've also got that Patreon bonus podcast where Ollie and I, for over an hour, break down this TV deal.
Break it down.
Noshua4 says, hey guys, it's great to hear that the deal has finally nailed down after being teased and talked about since I started watching AEW last year. Wrestling fans are eating well, and I can't wait for what else the buffet has to offer up. Jam that effing jam.
Also, in case it wasn't mentioned, you may have, but make sure you get your Ultrachats in, your Omega Chats, rather, to WrestleTalk.com/support, and we'll read out all the ones that are $5 and above before the end of the show.
We certainly will do. Also, subscribe and all that. Press the thumbs up. Leave a comment down below.
All the usual things.
The usual stuff. Just because he's written jam that jam there. And I was watching that McMahon doc, and they talk about Hogan going back in 2002. Mm-hmm. And then they've got lots of clips of him and like modern day Hogan and modern day Vince, or like a couple of years ago. And Hogan was wearing a t-shirt in the Hulk font that said "I am that I am." And I was like, oh, what a throwback.
The start of it all.
Blake Whitehouse here said, now I'm no wrestling booker, but if you're going to have a title versus title match with zero intention on changing any titles after someone is pinned, why not just make it a non-title match? Just promote it as the rubber match between Okada and Danielson. Well, Blake Whitehouse, because if you advertise something as a title match, more people tune in.
Yes, that's the gig.
That is unfortunately the gig of it. We kind of talked about this a few weeks ago. I don't know how much that adds in this day and age, but that's the theory, is that you advertise a title match and like more casuals tune in because they're like, oh, I might see a world title change.
Yeah. Well, that's it, It's the same reason you advertise any title match. Yeah. You might see a title change. This had a kind of a funky gimmick around it a little bit, but I think it worked for the match. And, it's like I said on Twitter, I think it is a creative solution of getting around this, little plot hole that you've dug yourself into. Yeah. And I think they did a decent enough job with it.
I like the stipulation more than I like the finish.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We'll get into that in a moment. Johnny All In has said, I worked myself into thinking Kenny Omega was going to make the save instead of Shibata in the Bucks private party segment, despite earlier video packages with Jack Perry. I assume AEW will stay on Triller for international viewers as we don't get Max. Thanks, guys. Yeah, that's yet to be announced, but pay-per-views are staying on Fight, so I would or Triller. So I would imagine that we'll also get it there as well.
I'll be very sad because I like watching it on Triller.
Oh, it's so nice.
It's really nice. It's my preferred method of watching. I would put on a VPN and put on like Fight or Triller when I was in Canada and just not watch the TV feed.
Yeah, it's so much easier.
Yeah.
Cameron P1 said AEW. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I freaking adored this show. Really fun matches, awesome closing segment, and a main event that killed. They really got me with that double pin in the opener, and when they restarted it, I went nuts. That three-way is going to, I'm going to assume that says hump, but it could mean something else. It's just 4 asterisks. Yeah. It's just 4 stars.
We'll leave it to your imagination.
And Cameron also adds here, also wanted to add how happy I am that AEW is starting to build back up their tag division. I know it's not a perfect setup, but I'm so happy Private Party is getting back into title contention. Let's hope the Outrunners and the Infantry get built up too.
Yeah, so I've got quite a few thoughts about a number of the talent that appear ready for a push.
Me too. And lastly now from Mike, he says, I can't get over how awful the Ospreay Ricochet finish was. It's one thing to do a double pin or a run in DQ. It's another to do both. Just pick one, or if you want to do both, do the double pin and have Takeshita come down before the restart. It's so disappointing. Well, we are going to talk about that first because that was our opening contest. We did actually start the episode with a promo from the Blackpool Combat Club, which was like almost like NWOS because it was like a constantly moving camera and like doing Dutch angles and stuff while everyone's just sort of staring directly, like old NWO before they became, we're just going to come down to the ring and do a 20-minute promo.
Any other wrestling faction.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I thought it was very cool. And like Claudia was like, I'm the same guy. Mox, he's the same guy. Like, we're all the same guys around here. And Mox saying that Danielson is going to be buried in his own backyard at Wrestle Dream, and I will relieve you of your duty, and I'll send Daddy home for good. Cool promo.
He might. We'll see.
We will see.
I've joined your bandwagon of I really just hope that he's fine and this has all been a work and we're actually gonna get this 18-month Bryan Danielson reign. I don't want the ride to be over.
Our opening contest was Ricochet versus Will Ospreay for the International Championship. So a lot of hype going into this match. This is their first rematch in a number of years. They have had 9 singles matches in the past. They were putting this over on commentary. Will is currently up 5-4. But a lot of this has been around. They are different wrestlers now. Like, Will is not the high flyer that he was 8 years ago that was annoying Vader on Twitter and then getting a book for Rev Pro so he could lose to him because Vader would refuse to put him over. True story. And it's Ricochet's a slightly different wrestler now as well. But Ricochet felt like he was trying to be the Ricochet of old. So he was like quicker, I should say, than Will was. So a lot of the story of the match was Ricochet doing mad counters for all of Will's moves, and then Will realized, I need to catch myself up. I need to speed myself up. And that's what led to the finish where he hit the hidden blade, but kind of fell over in exhaustion because he was trying to keep up with Ricochet's pace.
I adored this match.
It was great.
I loved this match so much. And I was so excited. I ended up having different feelings on it once I saw the finish. Don't get me wrong. But as I was watching this was like my favorite match. Like, I saw this, and I don't even know how many of the things in this match were done intentionally, but they made me love the match more. I loved that when they did, for their first minute, their back and forth flippy-doo deal, and they both hit the Superman pose, everything they did was like half a step off. They kind of stumble a little bit each time. And I don't, because I've seen them do these things and land it perfectly recently enough. But the fact that they were just like half a step off, I was just like, they're older. This is brilliant. What excellent, subtle storytelling. Again, might just be me going like, haha, this match being a little sloppy made it better. But I know these guys are artists, and I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if they took those things and added them to the match. You could go through like spot by spot and pick out the best bits of this. Like, Ricochet hitting his Hurricane Rana off the barricade was just a thing of beauty. I leapt out of my seat. Him doing like a backslide bomb.
Yeah, reversal of a hidden blade, no less. So he ducked the hidden blade and reversed it into that move.
I again leapt out of my seat. Ospreay did the spot he does about 3 times a year, where he does the big Hurricane Rana off the top rope, and he sticks the landing, and this was the best he's ever done it.
Yeah, it was.
This
awesome.
would have been a 10 in the Olympics. There was no like stop, move the feet. There was no stop, take a step forward. There's not a stop, whoop. It's just boom, perfect landing. Yeah. And I saw that and went, best wrestler in the world. My God.
And this was, I would say, the Ricochet that people have been looking for.
Yes.
Since coming into AEW.
1,000,000%. And they, again, it was sort of the story that a lot of us kind of thought they would tell, is that they are different wrestlers now. But they did such a marvelous job of telling it.
Yeah, I love it.
Because they told it in different ways, where Ospreay, again, like, he might have been a step slower than Ricochet, but I think most people would say he is a better wrestler now and has gone further in his development than Ricochet has since their last meeting. So there was a decent stretch there where you could see Ricochet kind of like have to go, okay, I need to step this up now, because Ospreay was just bettering him again and again and again in the middle part of this match, and it was just brilliant.
And then we got to the finish.
Yes.
Where Will hits the hidden blade, but the exhaustion has caught up with him, because you're right, like he has had to like he had to pick up the pace to try and keep up with Ricochet, and it got the better of him, but he hit the move, and they both fell into he collapsed into the pin, and his shoulders went down, and Ricochet's shoulders are down, so the referee went, all right, 1, 2, I was expecting a kick out, 3. And the match is declared a draw, and the crowd boo. Which was the desired response.
Yes.
Because Tony Khan, the big baby face, who was, with AEW, announces that this match is going to be restarted. Ricochet and Will wanted the match to be restarted as well. They were already yelling at the referee to restart the match. But Tony Khan made it official. The match will be restarted. And they wrestle for a couple of, 30 seconds maybe. And then Konosuke Takeshita runs down and he attacks Will Ospreay and causes a DQ.
Yep.
If I may, just quickly give this some praise. It got over with the crowd.
Yeah.
This crowd chanted "a-hole" at Takeshita. They did not boo the finish. They did not boo the company. They did not boo Tony Khan. They booed the man for causing the finish. So all the heat was directed in the right place. So from that aspect, it is a success. It got the wrong heat with me at home, though. Yeah. Because I wrote in my notes here, both Ospreay and Ricochet, the match declared a draw, boo. Tony is the babyface here, so the match is started. Takeshita runs in and causes the DQ, and then I wrote in all caps, that's somehow worse.
Yeah. I had the exact same thought last night, and I was told by Twitter that I was thinking too hard about it. See, you're not watching this podcast, but if you are, you can kiss my ass. Sorry that wrestling's too big for your brain sometimes. But that is it. That, I think, in theory, works perfectly. You do the thing to be like, oh, we're taking the match away from you. No, you're not. The wonderful babyface boss is giving it back to you. Oh, no, the heel wrestler took it away from you.
Yeah.
Shift the focus onto that, and that's why you do the double non-finish, is you do the first one to get people go like, oh, we're getting screwed out of it. Oh, no, we're not. The company loves us. Oh, no, we are, but it's because of you.
Yeah.
That, in theory, works perfectly. And again, in the crowd, I think it did work perfectly.
I think it did work.
Unfortunately, we now live in 2024 where I don't think this sort of booking style works as well as it would in other eras because we do sort of just be like, oh, I didn't get the finish to my match, rather than, oh no, Takeshita is beating up on my favorite wrestlers and all of that. We're a bit more cynical now, and I think if you had done this 4 or 5 years ago, you might have a bit of an easier time selling it. But because DQs are a bit more commonplace in AEW now, it does just kind of feel like a cheap finish.
Yeah.
I think it's a very creative solution for this, and I think actually from like a traditional wrestling booker standpoint, it's a really good idea, but also maybe for another time.
I think if you'd have done this finish 5 years ago, it would have gone over bigger than it did here, because 5 years ago, 4 years ago, you're right, DQs in AEW were not commonplace. They would do like one a year. Yeah. And so when they did do their one a year, it felt like a big deal as compared to the competition who were doing them 2 times a show.
Oh, it was more than that.
And it was sometimes more than
4 or 5 of them non-finishes a show.
It was just non-finishes up and down the card. So... But now in 2024, not only do we have more DQs, not regularly, but it feels like...
We had them a couple of weeks ago with the Mariah May match.
Exactly, right? And we had one in an Okada match. We had one in that trios match with BCC and the CMLL guys. But we also have a lot more time limit draws on TV as well, which also feel like non-finishes. So if you do them a lot, people just groan when they see them.
Yeah.
I am in the same boat now as I was with Raw when Triple H was doing them every week. He would do a DQ on every single show would have a DQ finish. And I got so sick of seeing DQ finishes because I was like, you're doing this to set up a 3-way feud. And this was done to set up a 3-way feud. So my initial reaction to this was like, I hate seeing this. But if you do them sparingly, it does work. But they're not doing them sparingly anymore. So I don't think it worked here. But at least, for the online crowd in particular, it did work in the building.
Yeah.
But I don't think it has worked anywhere else. And it says on my match for WrestleDream, it is going to be Ospreay, Takeshita, and Ricochet. So I'm like, cool, I'm getting a great match out of it. And that's going to be an awesome match. But in the same thing I had on the Raw podcast when I was so not upset, but I was annoyed at the finish to Reed and Strowman because Seth Rollins interfered. I was like, look, the finish is fine and it makes sense, but every other match on this show, bar one, had distraction and interference.
Yeah.
So by this point, I'm sick of seeing distraction and interference finishes. By this point now, I'm sick of seeing DQ finishes.
Yeah. And I think that's totally fair because honestly, that is the only thing associated with this match and what surrounded it that I think was even close to a negative, because you've got the Don Callis interaction before the match where Don and Kyle, they take off for the airport, and it leaves Konosuke Takeshita kind of staring at Will as he walks off and very seductively licking his lips or doing like that.
I wrote my notes here, I was like, oh man, Callis is so going to cost him this title later.
Right.
Like if a bad guy tells you I am leaving, that means they're running out in the match.
And this finish, again, on paper, is the next step forward in this very compelling Will Ospreay, Don Callis family storyline we've got going. And it's going to lead to a brilliant match and will ultimately lead to another Ricochet match with Will Ospreay down the line with a proper finish that I'm sure will also be excellent. So, like, I can't get that mad coming out of it, but as the opening match of your 5-year anniversary, we're going to give you the big match that everybody's clamoring for. I do feel like this finish doesn't leave you the exact same way that, say, the Danielson and Omega time limit draw did, where I was like, that's the perfect finish. That leaves you wanting more, but still gives you the perfect 5-star 30-minute match that these two could have had. It's a little bit different than that, and I think that does come down to just being really tired of DQs. It's just a little too cute for my liking.
I think when you look at that Omega Danielson one, they weren't doing a lot of time limit draws.
No.
At that point either. So it did feel like a fresh finish within AEW.
Yeah.
So yeah. For me, the heat that it got from me was...
Yeah.
And lame, and that is not what I want out of a Ricochet Will Ospreay match.
Yeah.
Backstage, Renee interviewed Mercedes, Moné, and Camille. Mercedes is the ultimate heel, so she threw to her own video package. It's all Moné moments, of course, but she's like, these are the best moments from Dynamite. The most interesting thing here, though, is MVP walked up and gave a business card. I was like,
Big business.
I like that. I've even written in my notes, ooh.
It's funny how easily Mercedes Moné could get slotted into so many heel factions.
Yeah.
Because there were people earlier this year, and they've certainly had interaction on TV where it's like she could join the Elite.
I mean, Okada would like that.
Yeah. But like she would fit in really well there as like a smarmy dickhead elitist heel. But also she is still a badass in her own right and would fit in amongst other badasses like Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley. So I don't know if they're going to go any of these directions. She didn't seem terribly pleased with the idea at the time, but I was like, oh, I hadn't considered that. That's an interesting thread to leave untied for a while.
We had some highlights of moments from Dynamite past, including Jericho versus Ishii. What I liked about this, a lot of them were there to set up, and this person is coming up next. I thought they tied that in quite nicely. But then they had Kenny Omega and two of them, and I was like, he's definitely coming back. But it's Jericho versus Ishii, and the other one was... the Guns winning the tag titles.
Woohoo.
Which I did actually forget happened.
Yeah. That short's just gone out, the tag title bit of the AEW Champion Survival Series over on partsFUNknown.
Yeah.
I'm past it. I've grown. I am no longer anti-guns, only Billy. I've learned from my mistakes that the guns were not the problem. It was their good-for-nothing dad. Like has to kick out of 2 straight coffin drops.
Renee then interviewed the Ass Boys, but Hangman Page just like you could see him walking in the background with a chair with this murderous look in his eye, and he takes Colton in the back of the head with one, and he throws the other one through a door. It was awesome.
It was the best throw through a door I've ever seen.
It's great. We then had TV time with the Learning Tree. Big Cass said that they've become better people over the last 5 years because of Jericho. Jericho came out and said, to put over the new TV deal and said that they've made a lot of experts look like idiots. It would work so much better if a babyface was saying it. He then said that not only is this the 5th anniversary of Dynamite, it's the 34th anniversary of Jericho, and he gets the names town wrong, but he doesn't want to just win, he wants to win another world title. So it's no longer the Ocho, it is whatever 9 is in Spanish.
Nueve.
Thank you, I didn't do Spanish at school.
Oh, we know. We know from the discussion when this came up last time, and you thought Ocho was an American saying.
I thought it was a dodgeball reference. And yeah, so I'm studying German on Duolingo. So he wants to challenge Mark Briscoe for the ROH Championship at WrestleDream. Briscoe comes out and cuts a great promo about how, like, look, I'm not here to make excuses. You pinned me in the match. Sure, you had so much help to do it, but it was a tornado tag match, so you were well within the rules to do that. So I'm going to accept your challenge. And I also think that I can beat you. And Jericho says that, I don't think you can beat me, Mark, but Jay could have. Like, we both know that I don't think you're ever going to be as good as Jay ever was. And then Mark punches him and accepts the challenge, and so the Jericho's going to get a Briscoe ass beating. I didn't like this. I'm not into the idea of Jericho versus Mark Briscoe as a feud. I'm not into the idea of Jericho going for the Ring of Honor championship. Like, I've got zero interest in so much of that. So, like, but that is more of a to Jericho thing. Like, I can move on with my life. But this has not earned bringing up Jay Briscoe. Like, this is not earned.
I don't mean to shock everyone, but I hate this man. And I'm over it. I'm long since over it. Anybody who watches this podcast knows that. I'm sure that in saying all of this, people will point to other distasteful characters. Christian Cage brings up people's dead fathers. What have you. There have been examples of wrestling tragedies used in storylines that I think are abhorrent. There are some where I think, you know what? They probably would have been fine with that. Paul Bearer, for example. His kids went and they were like, this is fine. He would totally understand and want them to do this.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a selfish aspect of it almost where I look at this and it boils down to like, well, do I think the person involved in this is being entertaining? Which in the case of Christian Cage, I do. He can maybe get away with saying things that other people would be criticized for much heavier because I think he's a very entertaining character.
I also think it is part of his character currently. He has made bringing up people's fathers part of his character. Like, people have come to expect it.
Yes, 100%. And that is to say that I do not find Chris Jericho entertaining in any way, shape, or form in 2024 and haven't for quite a while. This is the last thing I needed on this show. The last thing I needed on this celebration of AEW being on the air for 5 years was to cut back from a video promo and there's the stupid fucking highlight reel set in the ring, which has always been a horrible idea because it's just WWE light in the purest form done with the worst on-air character that is on pro wrestling TV right now. And then he goes out there and disparages the name of someone who has, died again quite recently. And for no reason. You can tell by the crowd reaction when Jericho challenged Mark Briscoe for the title, not one person is buying WrestleDream to see this match.
Absolutely not. And I think that's what kind of irks me about this. Because, like, Mark's out there. He will have been like, it's not like Jericho just said this off the cuff. Like, this is something they would have agreed upon. Let's use Jay to try and draw some heat to this. It's not the feud for it. Like, I wouldn't do it anyway, regardless. Like, if if someone suggested I wouldn't suggest it myself. That's what I mean. But it's like, it's Jericho versus Mark over the ROH title in a match that's going to happen like 2 weeks out from the pay-per-view, and they just throw it in there. It's not been any part of the story up until this point. Jericho just said it in a line, and it's not earned it.
No.
This is, like, in movie terms, them doing Death of Superman in the second Superman movie, the second Zack Snyder Superman movie. Like, you have not earned this moment, and this feud has not earned this moment.
No,
and I didn't like it.
No,
because I didn't think it was necessary.
No, I completely agree. If I never saw Chris Jericho on a wrestling TV show again, I would have no problem with it.
Yeah. I mean, we are not that far removed from the please retire chants, which have died off remarkably, but I can see them coming back.
Mm-hmm. I was shocked we didn't get them here. You know, when he was like, "Oh, I've been doing this for 34 years," I was like, "Yeah, you're past your expiration date."
No, instead of people trying to thank you, Chris.
Idiots. This is why Pittsburgh deserved that horrible Royal Rumble.
Darby had a promo about WrestleDream. It's about standing up to bullies when he was 13 years old.
Promo.
What
a baby face.
It's so good. He had this awesome line in here when he was like, I really think that I can be the face of this company, but I think people are starting to lose faith in me, and maybe I'm losing faith in myself. So I need to... It's in Washington. I need to do something at WrestleDream. I'm laying out an open challenge. I hope it's Bobby Lashley, and Bobby Lashley destroys that man.
Oh, that would be fun.
Like Bobby Lashley just...
What a brilliant pairing I hadn't even considered.
Yeah, and just ragdolls him around and just dominates him in his home state, no less.
That is it. With an open challenge, it's always tough, because like I would say Darby probably really needs a win, unless we're going down a Darby Allin, not losing streak, but like Darby gets humbled a little bit and realizes that this is not the way, or maybe he realizes that, you know, this is what comes with living this way, and I can just embrace that, and this will always be me. There's a million different directions they can go with this. But obviously, if you're bringing in, like, a big surprise, they're probably not going to lose. Bobby Lashley's not losing his debut, if that's who it is. If it's any big returning star, they're probably not going to lose in some big match, you know? What a promo. Like... Yeah. Oh, he relates it to getting stabbed on the bus.
Yeah.
Of just this guy spitting at the back of my head, and I turn around and be like, you want to do something? And he pulls out like a knife or a pair of scissors or a box cutter or something, and he's just like, yeah, what are you going to do? And he says, well, I guess I'm getting stabbed today. And then they had to pull them apart, and I just went, that's such a perfect encapsulation of who Darby Allin is and who and how he relates to the current storyline he's got with Mox. Loved it.
Two other options for the open challenge. Swerve, because he's going to be at WrestleDream. Like, I think that's been advertised, but he's not currently in a match. We're only 2 weeks out. So unless he returns next week and they announce the match, like maybe like if they are going to do him and Bobby. The other one is Danny Garcia. Like if he does re-sign, and that's the moment you bring him back, and like that's the big announcement that we've re-signed Danny Garcia, and he comes out, and you can actually do a really fun story there of like Danny beats him. It's like, yeah, I've surpassed you now. Like, you know, you were supposed to be the face of the company 5 years ago. It's been 5 years and you haven't done anything.
I'm the new pillar.
Yeah.
Also, Copeland? I don't know where that leg is at, you know? Yeah. But like, he debuted at WrestleDream last year. If he does a special return at WrestleDream this year, that'd be cool. I'd be into that.
We then had Hangman Page versus Juice Robinson. They brawled before the bells. They were like brawling through the crowd and stuff. Juice Robinson threw a beer, took a beer off a fan, threw it at Hangman Page, then grabbed some popcorn off a different fan and threw it. And I was like, dude, that's probably so expensive.
That's like $30 American.
Right? And I was like, man, it's like cost of living crisis. They've got to go spend another $30 now.
You know how expensive it was to get a decent sized meal at All In?
It was not good.
Yeah.
I had cold chips, and it cost me $12.50.
Yeah.
Also, in this match, Nigel McGuinness confirmed that he said thank you at the end of that match. He said he wasn't thanking Danielson, he was thanking Tony Khan for giving him the opportunity.
Sure.
They also set up a table in all of this. We had a great spot where Juice did a cannonball through the barricade. It was awesome. But then my favorite moment of this match actually was Hangman Page doing the fall-away slam into the corner turnbuckle, and Juice's selling of it was so good. We had some Deadeye stuff, and then we had a low blow behind Aubrey's back. Well, you know, Hangman kind of distracted her a little bit, hit the low blow, and hit the buckshot for the win. A really good match.
I really enjoyed this match. And again, I think it speaks to what I've always thought has been the great strength of a good wrestling promotion, whether that be, you know, AEW or NXT or whatnot, is the variety that you get on a show like this. Because you've got Ospreay and Ricochet in the opener. You're going to have, you know, your big main event style match later in the show. Here you had a nice Southern brawl. Mm-hmm. Love that. I really want to give a big shout out to Juice Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember when this guy came in. It was like 2 years ago now. He got booked for a match with Mox on a Dynamite show, And then they said that they'd signed him, and he went into the promo or the program with Ricky Starks, and everyone was like, this is really bland and not good and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people talking about how Juice Robinson was over the hill, you know, at that point, that his best days were in New Japan and long since passed, that ever since he cut his hair and changed his look and then turned heel, joined Bullet Club, that he wasn't the same entertaining guy quite as much. And then he just kept being Juice Robinson. And now I think he's a really fantastic part of this act.
Yeah, he's great.
I love this guy. I think he's a really underrated promo as well. Yeah. No one ever brings up Juice Robinson in a TLC of Best Talkers, but like a compilation of the best Juice Robinson promos, I would put up against most people in modern wrestling.
It's very entertaining with it.
So to see them just go out there and beat the piss out of each other is such a fabulous follow-up to what we'd seen on this show and what we've been getting from these two as of late as well.
And to echo what you've said previously about this, like, Hangman Page comes out and, like, I'm so invested. Like, he is my main character.
He's my favorite wrestler.
Yeah, I think he's so great.
Every time Hangman comes out, I'm like, oh yeah, favorite wrestler.
Yeah.
I might get distracted by how great other people are in different segments, but it always comes back to Hangman.
Page then took off his belt because he was going to choke Juice Robinson out with it. And they were pointing the points like, the ass boys were taken out. There's no one to save Juice. Switchblade music hit. Jay White makes his return. They brawl into the crowd and they go through the table that they set up earlier. And Jay, as a babyface, goes and helps his buddy up in Juice Robinson. Great to see Jay White back, and like bringing Jay White back and putting him straight into what effectively feels like a main event program because it's Hangman Page, who is one of your top guys.
Yeah. I mean, these are two guys that, again, have recent history, but also long-running history as well. I'm very interested to see like what this all looks like with Jay White being a babyface and not like a haha, I'm running around with the Acclaimed doing stupid comedy for 6 months.
I forgot about that.
Type babyface, but like a proper babyface. He's the one saving his friend and making the comeback and all that. Because I'm not sure how well that's going to work. I think he is a brilliant wrestler. I love Jay White. However, he has always been one of those guys where I think his style works best one way. Mm-hmm. And when he's tried to adapt that for other styles, I don't think it has worked quite as well. He works very well as like a heel defensive wrestler who cuts off the babyface by being really clever. And you certainly can adapt that to a babyface moveset and flip the roles around, but I've yet to see it. So I'll be very interested in whatever they end up doing together. Hopefully a match at Wrestle Dream and so on.
I'd imagine it's a Wrestle Dream, yeah. But I thought this was a great match and a great angle that came after it as well. Renee was in the parking lot to speak with Jack Perry. I can't look at Jack Perry now without thinking of what Mafu said recently, where he was like, I've got zero interest in Jack Perry, but I really like his truck. I'd rather see the truck wrestle.
We're going back to the top of Cobo Hall. We're getting another monster truck match.
Like that was that Sega fighting game. Was it Fights Mega Mix, where you could get the car from Daytona as one of the fighters? Anyway, Shibata walks up and says that he wants a match, TNT title match with Jack Perry at Wrestle Dream. Perry says he'll think about it and then attacks him from behind and accepts the challenge.
I thought this was lame.
I didn't think it was lame. I kind of dug it a little bit.
Maybe if I could really hear like the crowd losing their minds, it just kind of, I don't know, it just happened.
It did just happen.
It didn't. None of the sound effects and not sound effects, but you know what I mean. The slam onto the hood and punch into all the brawl. It didn't have any crunch to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you.
You know? Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of like how a lot of those old matches in the pandemic kind of felt, where it's just like not a lot of just sound coming from it. I don't know. It's a weird nitpick to have, but I don't know. I didn't care that much, and this didn't increase that.
We had another Dynamite moment. It was the first episode where Mox killed Omega through that glass table, and our other one we had was Danielson and Page having their 1 hour draw, which led into Danielson cutting a promo on Mox. He had this great line where he's like, this isn't your world championship, but it's not my world championship either. This is AEW's world championship, and this is where the best wrestle, and that is why I challenged Okada to a match tonight, because we are 1-1, and it's time to find out who really is the best. This is for AEW.
Have you ever seen a more generic white meat babyface promo, but done at the highest possible level.
Yeah, but it works.
Like, this is something you'd script out for any babyface.
I'm doing this for you, fans.
This is your championship, and I'm having this match for you. But Danielson's just the best wrestler.
So good.
And he delivered this better than anyone on earth could have.
We then had Britt Baker versus Serena Deeb, a match where there wasn't a lot of heat for it. The only heat that we really had for this match is that Britt Baker's from here. Mm-hmm. So Britt Baker was sort of over by extension because it was in Pittsburgh, but that is broadly about it. That said, I thought the match was very good, and I thought these two worked really well together, and Baker won with the lockjaw.
This was a bit of a weird one because, yes, we've seen Britt Baker go through Pittsburgh and have that be a really big deal. You know, the first Rampage, for example, was in Pittsburgh, and she was in the main event, and it was this real impressive big deal. We've all kind of soured on Britt Baker a little bit since then. She's not at the height that she was at like 2021, which was the height of her powers.
Not even at the height she was when she came back at Forbidden Door.
Yeah. So there was a bit of a disconnect there. I think while this match was, I think, pretty all right, all things considered, I think it's still a little bit of a stylistic mismatch in that I don't look at Britt Baker as someone who I particularly want to see like grappling. You know, I think she's at her best when she can do like a Thunder Rosa street fight type match.
Yeah.
A bit more of a brawler and show how tough she is. That I think that should be a bit more of her lane, but I think they still pulled it off decently well. This was just kind of a match with no heat. Yeah. You know, this was, well, Britt's a day one. We got to have her on this show.
That's it. And we're in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Let's pick someone for her to face. She'll face Serena Deeb.
Because she's in a feud with Queen Aminata, so we can have Aminata run out afterwards and set that up.
So, yeah, the Queen Aminata thing I think is a little bit interesting, and I'm willing to forgive it a little bit more. I don't think the presentation of it necessarily worked very well, but I'm not going to discount this just because it's not this big name or whatever. Because you look at that first Rampage as well, who saves, you know, Britt at the end of it, but the returning Jamie Hayter. And at the time, Jamie Hayter wasn't some big name that everybody was like, oh my God, biggest moment of the episode.
People laughed at it when it happened because it got no reaction.
Yeah. And eventually, you know, you got to introduce them somehow, and this and that. And Queen Aminata is not being introduced, but she's kind of being brought out into what is sort of a bigger, more, you know, important role on the show.
Totally.
You know, on Dynamite.
Yeah.
But it also didn't feel like she was terribly important in this. Like, Jamie Hayter is like, here's the new character, like, sidekick for Britt Baker who's going to one day usurp her. Here, Queen Aminata, like, helped Britt Baker up, and that's it. Like, I didn't watch this thinking Queen Aminata will be on the show next week, which is a shame because she's awesome and should be.
She's on Rampage.
But it's going to be a Rampage thing.
Yeah.
And anytime you set up something on Rampage, set up something for Rampage on Dynamite, it feels like a waste of time for Dynamite.
Well, I mean, what it's there for really is...
I say every time. They did it later on the show that actually worked. But
and it's also for the people who are there in the building because they are getting to see those Rampage matches taped.
Yeah.
So you're letting these people know, oh, hey, you're going to get this match later on tonight.
Yeah.
But the people at home are going to... Well, they're not going to watch it on Friday because no one watches the show, but you get my point.
Yeah.
Yeah, what this is for me at least, they're rebuilding the women's division because they've spent the better part of 2024 focusing on the Toni Storm Mariah May storyline to great success, and it was the best thing that they were doing, like up and down the division. It was really, really great, and they've done a lot of focus with Mercedes Moné and her TBS title run, but that has come at the expense of pretty much everyone else on the roster, so no one else really feels over. They should have been doing this in conjunction with the Toni Storm Mariah May stuff, so that when the Toni Storm Mariah May stuff finished, you had a bunch of challenges lined up for Mariah May. Mariah May currently doesn't have any challenges, so now they are having to build a lot of people up. And what we're kind of left with is Yuka Sakazaki, which was just for the Grand Slam match, Willow Nightingale, who lost to Chris Statlander at All Out, and Britt Baker, who lost to Mercedes Moné at All In.
Yep.
So, and Queen Aminata, who's not over, and Serena Deeb, who you've just brought back. So now we've got to try and start rebuilding. Fortunately, this should have been done months ago.
I agree.
Also, where is Hayter? Like, I know she was on Collision, but it's just like...
She's got to wrestle Saraya for whatever reason.
And I liked that match. I thought it was entertaining. I'm not the biggest anti-Saraya guy. Like, I think she is totally fine, but it's like, I like her more than I like her partner. Jamie Hayter, much like Hangman Page, I'm like, why aren't you the main character of this division at the moment?
1,000%.
Because I feel like she should be.
Every time they're not on screen, we should be asking, where's Jamie Hayter?
Where is Jamie Hayter? Our Dynamite moment was Joe versus Hook, and that then led into Renee interviewing Hook, because earlier in the night, Taz had a little the NXTs about him and got attacked in the parking lot. And so Hook said that, and Taz was sent back to New York, so Hook said he's going to find who did this. And that then led into a Christian Cage promo where he said, soon I'm going to have it all, hook, line, and sinker. I don't know if that's supposed to be there as a red herring.
I was just about to say this.
To make you think
red herring.
To make you think that it's Christian Cage. Because I've seen some people who are like, oh yeah, it's going to be revealed it was Hook.
Yeah, Hook killed his dad.
Hook killed his dad. Because the other argument is, well, Christian Cage has got a real thing against dads.
Yep.
So he can go and attack Taz in the parking lot. And we're going to do a Cage versus Hook feud, which I should be kind of into. So yeah, that's where we're heading.
Yeah. Those are the conclusions that I came to as well. Here are the presented two most likely options. I think they are both equally as likely. We will see.
We had a Dynamite moment of Omega versus Danielson, and then Renee interviewed Mariah May, who said that Willow was just failing upwards, which is true. And then Willow walks in, they argue and have a brawl. So likely it's going to be May versus Nightingale at WrestleDream. But May was also at ringside for the Britt Baker match, and when Britt Baker won, Mariah May was like, So we might be looking at a Mariah May Britt Baker match down the line as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got to work on all this.
Speaking of working on things, again, talking about the rebuilding phase we're currently in, the Private Party beat the Iron Savages. Stokely was watching from backstage. They won with Ginger Juice very, very quick. It was a squash match. Cassidy cut a promo talking about how he wants to get things off his chest. He said, we started this year saying it's new year, new us, and we're going to be the tag team champions. I'm like, did you?
I don't recall this, but I believe it happened on a Rampage or something.
I'm sure it did back in January, 10 months ago. And said, we want a shot at the Young Bucks right now. And immediately I'm like, cagematch.net. I was like, when was the last time you won a match? And I was like, they won a match on Rampage, like last month or something. The Bucks come out and they talk about, it's like, how can you do it? You can't have a 5th anniversary show without the people who built this company. And maybe we should have a match with the Private Party right now because, yeah, they did beat us on the 2nd episode of Dynamite. So let's run that back. But actually, we're on limited dates, so we can't really do that right now. Then Jack Perry runs into the ring and he attacks Private Party. Shibata runs down to even the odds. And then Christopher Daniels comes out to say that it's now been made official. It'll be Private Party and Shibata versus the Young Bucks and Jack Perry on Rampage. It's like the biggest match that Rampage has had in ages.
Yeah. I had a lot of thoughts about this. Because when Private Party started coming out and I looked at who was like, oh, there's someone already in there. It's the Iron Savages. Okay. Well, this is not going to be my favorite part of the show. And then they had new music, which is interesting. Always a good sign of, a push to come. And they come down and they beat them in like a minute.
Yeah.
And I went, well, that's interesting. Okay. You have my attention. Then they cut the promo, and as soon as they said, we want the Young Bucks tonight, I was like, they're going to win the titles. Right now, this is going to be your big historic moment of the 5-year anniversary, is they're going to do a flash title win and beat the Young Bucks and win the tag titles. And I'm not saying they necessarily like, oh, they should have done that or whatever, because I'm interested to see how this all goes. But this is growth, and I like that.
Yeah, it's
because
rebuilding.
For God's sake, it's a tag title challenge from a real team that's not FTR and not the Acclaimed.
It's rebuilding the tag division. Again, this is what we should have been doing months ago, is rebuilding some of these teams so that once we finish the All-In feud with FTR and the Acclaimed, we can move on to some established tag teams that have got some runs behind them. The problem with Private Party for me is that, well, the last thing I saw them do on Dynamite and Collision was get beaten up by the Blackpool Combat Club, then lose to the Blackpool Combat Club. Mm-hmm. So I'm not exactly looking at Private Party being like, well, they just did beat Bear Bronson, so I guess they should beat the Young Bucks next.
I don't disagree, and I think this...
the Gross Young Vets.
Yeah. This could be, this could have been a much longer term project than just we're going to flip the light switch and now we're going to make them contenders, in quick order. But we're here now.
Yeah, it's the building
We
blocks.
need contenders.
We need them.
We need them. You know, the time we needed the most was yesterday, and the second best was right now. And we're right now,
I guess so.
and I'm going to take this because we are overnight getting a new contender tag team. And just the way that all this was presented, I'm like, oh, I think they're going to win the tag titles, which is more than I've thought Private Party is going to do basically since that OG tag title tournament.
Well, that's what I liked about this, you know, to put it over, is that it ties into what Blackpool Combat Club said to them, which is, you've been here for 5 years and have accomplished nothing. The only thing you've got of note is that you beat the Young Bucks on the second episode of Dynamite. So at least, you know, they are using that character motivation to move themselves forward and become a bigger tag team. But yeah, I feel like it's a bit more of a longer term project than just like, because otherwise they are just Yuka Sakazaki, but in tag form.
Yeah, I have a lot more faith in this than that. Basically.
Should also point out as well, that Deeb match was the only women's match on the show. Even with 2.5 hours, because this was a very long show.
Yeah.
Still only one women's match. So, you know, do better. We had our Dynamite moment of Swerve and Joe signing a contract, which sets up Renee interviewing MVP, who's going to make his announcement. But Prince Nana walks in, and he's like, you said a lot of things last week, and I've said a lot of things, but I wanted to remind you, I used to be a wrestler, and I will lace up my boots and I will beat you up. And MVP was like, look, I'm here to make an announcement. I'm not here to hear your complaint. But if you want to take it up, you can take it up with my new complaint department. And it pans across, and Shelton Benjamin is standing there. And it's awesome. The crowd goes ballistic for Shelton Benjamin. Apparently, according to Fightful Select, this deal's been in place for a few weeks now. Bobby Lashley's is also done.
I'm not surprised.
Not surprised. His debut is imminent. So I like this. Slowly building this Hurt Syndicate.
Well, again, you don't have to debut them all at once.
No, you don't.
You get steady pops and things to make everybody happy for longer. That's fantastic. My God, if there's one thing that your wrestling fan loves in the year 2024, it's people that were awesome in 2005.
Yeah, okay.
And they still are awesome. Like, this is not 20 years ago, past his peak, whatever. No, if you could ball out then and didn't get your shot, people love you. If you got over because you were great in an era that sucked, people want you to get your flowers. And there are so many people that want Shelton Benjamin to rightfully get his flowers that they get an enormous pop like this when he debuts on Dynamite.
That man was not on Raw. It'd have been a different story. That man had been drafted to SmackDown. Times would have been very different.
Oh, man.
Because unfortunately, he was drafted to Raw to try and be a main event guy when there was one guy who was not letting anyone else get in the main event spot.
Yep. I love Shelton Benjamin. This excites me and makes me very happy inside. Deserves that pop and so much more.
And our final Dynamite moment we got was MJF versus Will Ospreay. Again, kind of teasing things going an hour. They set up an hour-long time limit draw earlier. We then had this being like, this went almost an hour to set up our main event of Bryan Danielson versus Kazuchika Okada for the AEW and Continental Championships. The gimmick of this is an old 70s like NWA style thing of it's the world champion versus the TV champion, but the TV champion has only got a certain time limit for their belt because that's the stipulation to the belt. So their belt is only online for the stipulations per that belt. Once that expires, then it is for just the world championship. But in that first 20 minutes, it's for both titles. It's a way to have a world champion versus a TV champion with a clean finish when no one has to switch belts.
Yep.
It is a perfectly fine... what the problem is
a perfectly cromulent stipulation.
It is a cromulent stipulation. The problem with this stipulation is that you mentioned this earlier, we're in 2024 and people will just pretend to be mad about things on Twitter. So like a lot of people pretended to be mad and I don't get it. I'm confused. These are the same people who are like, I don't understand the Continental Classic. The point system's too confusing when it's actually incredibly basic and it's very easy to follow, but people just want to be thick and just not have and want to have things overly explained to them.
Yeah.
So the gimmick itself I thought was fine. Also, I thought it added to the match and told a really fun story in the match, which was in the first 20 minutes, Okada didn't need to beat Danielson. Danielson needed to beat Okada. So Okada took things very leisurely in those opening 20 minutes. He's not going to overly exert himself. He let Danielson exert himself until it got down to the final minute, because Danielson had some real urgency about him. Okada had rolled out to the ring a bunch. So now Danielson really needs to get this win. So Okada's then on the back foot, gets the label lock in with 1 minute to go. Okada, with his long reach, gets to the ropes. Unfortunately, then gets hit right with the Psycho knee, but got that veteran smarts, rolls to the outside. The 20-minute time limit expires. Now it's just for the AEW World Championship. And now Okada is wrestling a guy who's just spent 20 minutes sprinting at him. And he's fresh as a daisy, so he's in control. And now Danielson has to survive this match. And I thought they told a really good story here. And I really enjoyed the match up until the finish.
Yeah. The only thing... I think the commentators and the wrestlers and everybody did a very good job of explaining the stipulation and hyping it up and making it feel like it was part of the match and part of the story and all that. I feel like that was a grand success. The one nitpick that I had with the whole thing was when the Blackpool Combat Club kind of circled ringside a little bit.
That's where I don't like it.
And they said, oh, well, the Continental Championship stipulates that there's no outside interference, no wrestlers allowed at ringside. But that also expires after the first 20 minutes. And I guess it would if the time limit stip was also expiring. But I was like, okay.
I didn't need that.
That was just one bullet point too many to me.
I did not need that line explained to me because it did not even cross my mind.
Yeah. That aside, I thought this was brilliant. I thought this was absolutely phenomenal as a TV wrestling main event. I watched this, and I will be perfectly honest, I have seen many Kazuchika Okada matches in my time. Probably more than everyone in the office, perhaps combined. And this is what you get with Okada. I'm sorry if some people will look at the first 10 minutes of an Okada match and be like, this match is boring. Why doesn't he try harder? That's who this man is. It's the slow build, and by the end, you're going nuts. And granted, at the very end, I think we lost some of that because I didn't like this finish either. But you start off slow, and you build. And I think this match, with its built-in stipulation in particular, had even more of a reason for Okada to go slow in kayfabe. And they worked that in, and they did such a phenomenal job where they locked him into this horrible twisting arm wrencher submission hold that was similar to what Danielson beat him with at Forbidden Door. And it was like, this is the finish if he's going to win this title. But Okada gets the boot on the ropes. And from there, it's like, oh, damn it. I missed it. Okay, now we change the strategy and everything. I saw that, and maybe it's a basic thing, but I would see so many people not take this amount of care into this and not be able to perform this so well. Because, again, shocker, these two are two of the best to ever do it. They are capable of pulling off an incredible story and taking a simple story and making it incredible.
Yeah.
I had nothing bad to say about this match until about the last 15 seconds.
Yeah, this was a match where two guys looked at the stipulation and was like, okay, well, how do we use the stipulation to tell a story in the match? And they told it very, very well. I popped massively when Okada did the knee plus. And then, like, for a near fall, and then Danielson hit his own Rainmaker, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm so into this. And what a Rainmaker it was as well, by the way. A fabulous Rainmaker by Bryan Danielson. But finish was, Okada was on top. He hit a series of Rainmakers, and then Claudio Castagnoli kind of pops up at ringside. And then on the other side is Pac. They're not over the barricade, they're just standing at the barricade, and Okada is sort of looking at them, playing off the finish of the Cardiff match with Claudio and Okada. Danielson then gets a backslide, and he gets the win. On paper, that's fine. There's a guy, Okada just took his eye off the ball momentarily, and it cost him. He was on top, and it cost him. It also beautifully furthers on from the Claudio feud that we set up in Cardiff, and it will play nicely when we get to the C2 next month. So a lot of this works. For me, I think my problem with this is, and why I didn't like this finish, is you were setting this up as well as the Danielson-Okada rubber match, where we're going to determine which of you is the best man, and we did not get a clean finish in here. And this is not like Kenny Okada, where the third match was it's always going to end up in a draw because, it's G1 and stuff to set up the fourth match. This didn't have what I wanted out of it. It's not the finish that I wanted to this match.
That's it. And if the Ospreay Ricochet match had a brilliant clean finish, maybe you can get away with this. But there were 2 matches I wanted to see on this show, and they both had kind of schmozzy finishes. I probably wouldn't do that. I think both of them were fantastic matches with a bit of a dud finish.
Overthought finish.
That's it. And if you are someone who will look at the big picture and just look at, like, this is the match that I'm going to watch, and it's going to be 5 stars, brilliant match. I don't really care if the finish isn't as good. I think that's totally fair, and you got 2 amazing matches as a result. If you don't want to look at it that way, I do think both of these matches lost marks a little bit with their finishes. And that, I mean, is what it is, but it's a bit disappointing. And for a 5th anniversary show, I would have expected confetti and ballyhoo at the end, with a big satisfactory finish and whatnot.
Disappointing is such a good word to use. I think that is an excellent way to describe what this was, because it was really good with a disappointing finish. That they had promised a lot and they did not really deliver on that.
Yeah.
And it kind of, there's a little bit of a sort of a stench to it, which is, stop sending me messages on Discord. I'm working. Even though there's people trying to contact me about work. It's a little bit of a stench about it and I feel like this has happened a lot since Okada has come in, where Tony Khan knows that he needs to protect Okada. He knows he needs to have everything and make Okada feel special, but Okada is not his world champion. So Okada needs to lose matches because he's not the world champion. But he also doesn't want him to just lose matches. So every time he has to come up with some convoluted thing, whether it be a DQ or it's a time limit draw or it's a this. So we can't just have clean finishes in Okada matches because he protects him like he's the world champion, but he's not the world champion. But he needs to be in there with world champions, but he can't beat those world champions. But we also can't beat Okada. So we're kind of in a bit of a can and can't.
You can't have your cake and eat it too with it. You either book him like a world champion who never loses unless you go up against the world champion, and you do that once, maybe a year, maybe ever, not twice in 3 months, with both of them having a little bit of a wacky finish. Or you don't. You either book him as a world champion or you feel comfortable beating him.
Yeah.
That's because I think this has a poor return on investment long term if you keep doing it. I do want to just say, like, it's really tough because I can't look at the matches that we were given and, like, I think disappointing is a good way to describe the finish. But, like, if we put a picture of, like, Okada with just disappointing as the thumbnail for this video, everybody would rightly lose their minds for it. Like, we did get a number of very good matches, and I thought overall this show was very good. It's just a little too complicated for their own good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is encapsulated 5 years of AEW Dynamite, excellent wrestling, overthought finishes.
Yeah.
But yeah, let us know in the comments what you thought of the show. We've got a poll up at the moment. Give it a little thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle, and let us know what you thought of the show. We'll read out that result before the end. And if you want, ding, 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 your thoughts to be read out on the air, that is your last call. WrestleTalk.com/support. We'll read out all of them before the end of the show. James here, who's been in Memberg for 2 months in a row, said the Renaissance era is in full effect.
Interesting.
No, I haven't heard it called that before. The Renaissance era.
Yeah. I don't know. They kind of like this Dynasty era gimmicking of it.
Oh, yeah?
I've seen a lot of people call this the Dynasty era.
Yeah, I don't know.
The Ospreay swerve at the top and, new era.
I see. I thought, I wasn't sure if Renaissance era was like in like a cross wrestling. So
yeah, it could well be.
Like the late 90s is the Attitude Era, and then the mid 2000s is the Ruthless Aggression. Like, and even when you talk about the Attitude Era, that kind of encapsulates WCW and ECW at the same time.
No, that's fair. I hadn't considered that. I do like that.
Cameron P1 said, "My God, to think I only started watching wrestling casually in 2014 to religiously in 2016, witnessing the rise of BTE into AEW, and now I'm going into my 5th live show this year for TNA tonight and the new AEW deal. Goddamn, what a time to be a wrestling fan."
Indeed. Count your blessings, all, that you're not trying to get into wrestling in 2006.
Yeah, or like me, you got into wrestling in like 99, 2000, and then you had the disappointment that came following that, where it's like, these are the best years. Oh man, is this what it is now?
What do you mean it's over?
Matt here said, 5 years of AEW. Mad to think a company filled with ups and downs. Glad it's going to still be around for the foreseeable future. For both the wrestlers and fans, having more choices, variety is important, makes wrestling more exciting. From 2019 to early 2022, I loved the product and I was in my honeymoon period with it. From September 22 to April 24, I did fall out of love with it and wasn't crazy with the direction it was going. Right now, I like the product, but definitely have criticism about the booking tropes I don't like. Still glad it exists, not crazy about certain things like adding a year of injury to Phoenix Deal and him and Penta want to leave. Hey now, Penta has said that his presence is AEW. If you can't take that man at his word, then I don't know what to tell you. Deal's expiring in the summer. Don't like it when WWE had a year of injury time to Brody Lee when he wants to leave. Don't like AEW doing it to the Lucha Bros. Don't hold talent hostage. That being said, AEW and WWE need each other to push the others to be better. I genuinely believe that TK and Triple H have pushed each other to be better bookers, and we as fans benefit from it.
That's the idea.
Look, if I might as well just book Penta.
Yeah.
Just book him in matches and just put, have him lose to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying bury him on the way out.
No, but like put your own talent
do
over.
the thing that you've done in wrestling for decades. You put people over on the way out. Yeah. Don't take them off TV for a year and just say, like, no, you can't go over there. You can't go to your friend's house, actually.
Yeah.
Like, go for it. Give me another Young Bucks Lucha Brothers match while you're at it.
Like, the biggest mistake Penta had was he talked about it too much. He told too many people, I'm going. No. I ain't sticking around here, I'm going. And then before you know it, WWE are making merchandise for them. The next thing you know, TK is adding a year onto your contract.
Yep.
Barosio Live here said, hey guys, just curious, is it true that Shane McMahon could be joining AEW? Been seeing a lot of news of it lately. Is it just rumors or is it most likely going to happen? Well, there is no news or rumors about it, really. There's just Shane jokingly took a photo with the Young Bucks in the airport, which I thought was hilarious because they accidentally bumped into each other. I don't think anything really came of the meeting. I think the most recent Fightful Select report is that there is no news.
Until we find out that he's the one that's been telling Moxley what to do.
Well, that's the joke I made in the edited review today, because Moxley did cut a promo saying, like, look, I've been told I've got to make these decisions. And like it keeps like he's talking in cryptics, he's talking in riddles. Who is this person that's pulling
the higher power?
Who is the higher power that is pulling the strings around here? I would love it if it's Shane McMahon. That'd be so funny. Andy here said, regarding Bryan's final run, let's say he doesn't lose at Wrestle Dream. How long into his title run go before you both start to believe he should drop the title and retire? You joked 18 months, but legit to yourself getting tired of Bryan's run? Nope. No. If he's champion until all in next year, I'll be thrilled.
Yep.
I'll be at whatever London show they do next year. If Danielson is still the champion, I'll cry again.
I do not believe any world in which I get tired of Bryan Danielson wrestling the best match on whatever show he's on.
No. Because if he loses, that means he doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And that will make me sad.
Yeah.
Do you know what I will get tired of? Not seeing Bryan Danielson have great matches.
Listen, it's an amazing gimmick they've got worked into all of this because, yeah, whenever he loses, that is very significant. And you know what? I am going to be cheering for him in every match because I don't want to see it end.
Hiko here said, off-brand with the quantity of screwy finishes, on-brand with them not featuring women properly, even with a big overrun. Close to being a truly special episode. Excited for cheaper pay-per-views. Max is available in many different US bundles, all promising.
Indeed.
And
you wouldn't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. We don't have it over here. And Gordo has been a member for 36 months in a row. Just says, AEW.
Concise.
Mayor of Painesville Dan said, hello Luke, hello Tempest, hope you're doing well. 5 years of Dynamite, massive new TV streaming deal, just had an intense wrestling weekend last week, and I'm about to head to WXW World Tag Team Festival with Cardona Thatcher and Hideki Suzuki.
He was in the Diamond Mine in NXT.
Was he now?
Yeah, Hideki Suzuki. He was Roderick Strong's right-hand man. Our own Dave Bradshaw is going and doing commentary for that.
I bet you he is. Zonal Blue has been a member for 39 months in a row. Said, after so many months, I finally decided to join the Patreon. Excited to see you guys over there. Also, congrats, AEW. More wrestling is good.
It is.
And shout out to Chocobo Kid, who was gifted a membership. Very, very nice. 10 Rosa Hello, I was thinking about you yesterday. Said, lads, I'm so happy the TV deal is finally done. Just need the Fox side sorted and we are good. Love White being back. Need Cole, Copeland, Omega Ibushi back as well. This was a fun show and I'm keen for Wrestle Dream. Cobain / Hawk grandson, ultimate 90s Jesus.
I would imagine you've seen this. Kurt Cobain's daughter has had a child with Tony Hawk's son.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
No.
90s.
Francis Bean?
Yes, Francis Bean Cobain has had a child with Tony Hawk's son.
I had not seen this. When did this happen?
Recently.
When were they?
This happened like a week ago.
Man.
I don't know how this has gone past your radar.
This really has.
But they were like, well, it's close enough. This is the rebirth of Jesus. This is the most 90s baby. Imagine going to school and saying your grandparents were Kurt Cobain and Tony Hawk.
Tony Hawk. That is, man, that's taking me for a loop. You could have given me 1,000 guesses and I never would have gotten that.
Yep.
Even with you writing down Cobain and Hawk, you give me 1,000 guesses, I would have never have got that. I'd have gone through the Road Warrior and that Hawk Tour girl before I'd have gotten to Tony. Crikey. Anyway, that's the end of the show.
Yeah, we've got another one here.
Please do.
Atten WH or W Hog. Atten W. I don't know. Atten W Hog says, "You know what has never happened in an open challenge? No one shows up because no one gives an S. With where Darby's character is, it could be interesting if that happens."
Man, he goes out there, lays out an open challenge, and no one answers it.
They're all like, "Nah, we're good."
Yeah, actually, I get nothing from wrestling you.
I don't think that would be a good use of a time slot on a pay-per-view, but
with a guy in his hometown. Yeah.
It's
not what I would do, but it's an interesting idea.
No. Also, in response to Tenrosa's actual message, I feel like we get so close to having the full roster back together, and then the Lord rips it away from us again. But the blessings may soon be upon us. Give me the Golden Lovers. Give me Adam Cole. Everybody is so close. Except for apparently Mark Davis, but we'll get him back at some point too.
Listen.
Bandito, I need the full healthy roster. I will cry happy tears.
Listen, if anyone can make it happen, it's 90s Jesus.
Yep.
Like they have risen. And now everyone can get out of bed and get back to work. What a time.
This is my favorite thing.
We have a overall rating for Dynamite from you wonderful viewers. Thumbs up, 77%, in the middle, 16. I'd say that's about right.
I think that's about right. It feels maybe a little low, but not considerably.
Yeah. I think giving a Dynamite review and like what we found on our Dynamite shows as of late is that there is a very consistent thumbs up, thumbs down ratio because there are a bunch of people who just come in to thumbs down the video because you're reviewing AEW Dynamite. And that happens very much in the poll as well. Like a 6% thumbs down is like ludicrously high. Like there is just going to be a contingency there that kind of throws the numbers off ever so slightly.
Yeah.
But thank you all so much for watching. We will see you this coming weekend because Ollie Davis and Sat Iniangi will be here in studio to review Bad Blood. And then we'll be back on Tuesday with the Raw review. So yeah, check it out. Subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next week. I've been Luca and DAD. That has been Tempest. Jam that jam.